my final words are that I know God's will is working in South Texas. I can see it every day. I see it in the hearts, the minds, the spirit of the people. And I think that they know that we need someone to speak for their voice, these issues that affect all of us.
All right, Mr. Greg Kunkle, a candidate for Congressman District 34. Is that
Yes,
correct?
sir.
Thank you for joining us in the den.
It is a pleasure to be here. Not the best day I'd like to be here, but an important day nonetheless.
Yeah, not the best of circumstances. Earlier today, we were watching the news and we saw that Charlie Kirk was murdered. And, assassinated, and it's really affected me, I guess. I don't know, where were you when you heard about it?
Today, honestly, I was at home, working at home with my daughter, going over some edits to my platform coming out for South Texas, Vision 2050, the next 25 years in our district. That's what I'm running on. And, checking some sources online and saw the breaking news and followed it minute for minute. My daughter and I actually were at a Charlie Kirk Turning Point USA event 2 months ago at Texas A&M University. We now, that day I posted some photos and videos. We got to see Charlie. Laura Trump was there. And now it has totally different significance in regards to that's the last event that we'll ever see him, that he'll ever have at Texas A&M. And just, it's still shocking what just transpired.
Yeah. Charlie Kirk was not really a divisive type of guy. He was not a confrontational guy. He did engage in debate, but it was clean. He allowed people to voice their opinion. He never tried to shut anybody up. Yet hate rose up and ended his life.
It's, Charlie embodied in his practice, in his business, in his tour, everything that American political debate asked in freedom of speech, having your voice heard. I saw it. I witnessed it. There was an open microphone where you would get to stand almost this far away from Charlie and call him whatever name you want, ask whatever question you want, bring up whatever topic. And he allowed it. He would let you go first and would respond. And that's what our country was built on in political rhetoric, debate, the freedom to debate the issues. And, for him to be politically assassinated for it. I posted earlier today and I said this: he is a living testament to his own words and spoke the truth until his last breath.
Yeah, and he wasn't even a politician, at least yet. He was just somebody who was speaking truth at college campuses, and his following kept increasing and increasing and increasing. And these, even perhaps liberal colleges, people were coming in, and it probably didn't start the way where it was right now. I think it might have started with more vitriol and kind of hate towards him, but it started growing, and college students really started to listen to what he had to say, and kind of almost started relating to what he had to say, didn't they?
Yeah. Going back to seeing him at Texas A&M University back in August. First of all, Texas A&M has been in the news for some controversy. They're hosting an annual drag queen fashion show, something on campus, in one of the rooms, and there's been protests about it. And that was probably the main topic because it was occurring the same month that was there when they were talking to Charlie. And I'll say this, my daughter will be entering college next year. And the next generation, I don't even know what they're called, alphas, betas, there's something. And they are definitely moving more in the conservative trend in regards to pop culture, in regards to talking about marriage, having families, working, kids, taking life seriously in this wonderful country that we live in. And Charlie would preach those messages to these kids. One of the most ironic parts that people don't even know, again, I saw him at the university, and he doesn't go to college, and he sits there on a campus saying you don't need to go to college to all these college kids, and
Yeah.
and they listen to him, they cheer for him, and really he will never be forgotten from a conservative public speech perspective. One of the greats, and to be a Christian conservative, leaving behind 2 young children. There were reports that his wife and children were right behind that tent there, waiting for him to finish, and
Really?
they were right there. And again, just evil is what it was. It was nothing but evil that we have seen commonplace. I mean, Pastor, two weeks ago today, the transgender shooter opened fire into a Catholic church of children praying. Last week in, I believe, North Carolina and the Carolinas, a homeless man stabbed a woman on a subway, a Ukrainian refugee. And then today, Charlie Kirk assassinated. There is evil in the world that's spreading right now, and we can see it.
Yeah, but that side's supposed to be the side of tolerance and inclusion, but they're not very tolerant at all. I think the right tends to be more tolerant of other people's views and perspectives. They're not hateful. I mean, you can come to the table and voice your opinion, but I just think that they don't have the ability to articulate what they believe because it's not founded on anything. It's just going against what's right for the most part. You know, Charlie Kirk was he was a family man. He was a father. He just kind of embodied a conservative, a godly person. And yet they hunted him down and they shot him for no good reason.
I don't have the words to describe the tragedy, honestly. And I do know this, that his memory will not live in vain. His words, his actions. People have said he could have been a future president. Right. That is something, you know, me running for office in politics. Those are very heavy words for someone to say about anyone to achieve that office. And he certainly had the potential to be up there with the names such as Reagan, Lincoln, Trump, and it could have been a Kirk, honestly. Lord, only God knows the future that he could have had. But I rest assured, though, that he was called home. I know he is in heaven today.
Yeah, that's the solace that we have, that we know that when we leave this earth, that we will be in heaven with the Lord when he calls us home. And I need to apologize up front because I've been a little bit out of it since then. Not on purpose, like I didn't realize it, but I've been looking at some of my Facebook posts and comments, and I haven't even realized that I wrote that. So it's kind of weird. You know, we had church tonight, and I really wasn't going to try to teach anything. I just, you know, we spent it in worship and just praying for our country and praying for the nonsense that happens in our world that usually is coming from the so-called tolerant people. They're not very tolerant, are they?
No, sir. And I apologize too. I'm actually a little aggravated, you know, boiling, invigorated, because I want to find and bring to justice whoever did this, and make sure that we know, and that our justice system, you know, today, actually, I am not a fan of the justice system, because I know that this man, if they have the death penalty in Utah, I think he would deserve it. Political assassination, for terrorism. It was terrorism. And this man will probably stay in jail for another 20 years on appeals, getting fed every day. And you know, that's 20 years that Charlie Kirk's children won't have a father. And so I'm enraged and want to, you know, I feel like I want to help. And maybe even today, just speaking here with you, you know, maybe that's enough for some people to see, to learn, and hopefully help in that way. But, you know, like you said, the left is not very tolerant. We hear them asking, they start by asking for you to accept whatever the topic du jour is. And then it gets to the point where they're going to shoot you in the face if you don't accept their will or publicly preach against it. Why
is it that they get so mad? You know, we have this forum where we can have conversation and we can debate ideas and thoughts and perspectives. But because they don't have anything of depth, they resort to violence and they resort to just trying to shut you up. You show up to any kind of rally of a leftist group and they're just going to try to shout you down and not let you talk. They don't even engage in a conversation because I believe that it's indefensible. They cannot defend their positioning. And that's why they have to do things like what they just did, is shoot a man in cold blood just because he was being a voice.
You know why? Because his voice was working. His voice was proclaiming God's will to the public. And they know that eventually with time that'll produce success. That'll bring people to the table. That'll create new Christians. Even at Texas A&M at the event that I went to, there was people from all around the world. Agnostics, atheists, Indians, Chinese, you name it. People were there. People are listening. People were being witnessed to. And so I think the reason that they shout, the reason that they resort to violence is because when they do not get their way, they recluse inside of themselves back to that innate human instinct of violence, of force, of if I cannot have a conversation and get my way, then I'm going to force it and utilize whatever system I have, maybe a local government, maybe if your favorite guy is the president previously, and utilize that office to get my way.
Yeah. It's sad, we're growing up in a generation where a lot of these people didn't have parents. So they throw temper tantrums. That's how they respond. They have no discipline. They have no self-control. So they react in that way. And we just recently saw just a few days ago, a young lady being murdered on a subway train, I believe it was, by a gentleman. And that's becoming more and more common. It's like people are becoming desensitized. I believe there was like 5 men, at least 4 men around and a woman, and they did nothing, and they just watched this young lady die. But when you do something like that other gentleman that, strangled this guy that was being a threat on a subway as well, you get persecuted and prosecuted.
That's right.
And they want to throw everything at you. But this gentleman was a repeat offender. I believe that he had I don't know how many offenses against him, yet he was out free. And there he goes and kills an innocent young lady. And we're shocked. We don't know how it happens. And I believe that that our system needs to become tougher on crime like that and not give them such leniency to be able to go out and commit more heinous crimes like this gentleman for no good reason. Just stabs this woman in the neck, or I'm assuming it was in the neck. I did not watch it. Just sometimes I can't get around to watching stuff like that.
I'll tell you why it happened. It happened because she was white, and this gentleman didn't even know that she was a refugee from Ukraine fleeing a war that her country was in. And I try to think about the young lady. I cannot say her name correctly, so I'm not going to try. But she just got here from a war-torn country. She's probably never possibly lived in a place with subways in cities, a more metropolitan type of area. And I've ridden, you probably have too, I've been in subways in DC, New York. You watch yourself, you watch your back. But if you've never been here or been in some of those areas, you wouldn't even know that. You would just think, I'm riding public transportation like a bus back in a small town in Ukraine or something. And from what I saw in the evil in his eyes, he saw a white woman that he thought didn't deserve to live. And he took out a knife and killed her in cold blood. And like you said, I believe he was arrested 11 or 12 times previously. And today it was discussed that we should hold judges accountable. If you killed a woman who was pregnant, or a DWI, involuntary manslaughter, and you killed a baby, you would be held liable for the life of that child. Well, we have judges releasing repeat offenders based off of their convictions and their judgments. So why aren't we holding them a judgment for the death of innocence, blood on their hands?
That's a good point. I think that's a very good point. And I think if that started to happen, they'd be a little bit more careful as to who they release, because it's not the first time that something like that has happened. Somebody that's been released that shouldn't have been released goes and commits a worse crime, and innocent people are dying, are being killed by people like this that are receiving so much leniency by radical leftist judges. And I think it's crazy. There's this radical left that it's hard to comprehend. And it's good to see that people are starting to move away from it, but they've fed it so much that it's become this monster. And I think that's what took place today.
I completely agree. And, I'll say it out loud. And then I think a lot of this started when President Obama was in office and when he utilized the highest office in the land to further divide the people of America. When there was a chance to bring unity, regardless of color, regardless of your background, regardless of race, we saw time and time again dividing of the population and proclaiming inequality and victimhood and reparations. And when you do that from the highest office in the land in these United States, it has consequences. And President Obama said it himself, elections have consequences.
Why do you think he did that? What I know there's a bigger agenda and a bigger machine behind him. He, I believe that he happens to be one of the big leaders behind that group. General Flynn, I had a conversation with him. He was here in the area in a speaking engagement, and I got to ask him, who's behind all this? Like, and he mentioned Obama. And I'm like, really? I thought he was kind of more of a puppet type of person. But he said, no, he's a big player in this. So why do you think that they're trying to create that division, especially after America elected him? Why is he trying to? What's the motive? What's the end game?
I will say that I think President Obama truly believes in the things that he says, but he believes in them so much he can't see the forest beyond the trees. He can't see his own lies that he says out loud.
I don't think he believes it. I honestly don't. Nah. I can kind of read phoniness and lies, and you can tell that one time while these elections were going on that he came out and was kind of telling guys like, I don't remember the exact wording, but kind of like, are you black or not kind of thing, Why are you voting for this or that? And I'm like, what? Like, who do you think you are trying to force people to vote a certain way because it suits you? It doesn't suit that people group, right? Democrats do not support, or their whatever you want to call it, their agenda does not benefit Black America or Hispanic America.
Right.
It benefits only them, the people that are in the positions. That's it, and their buddies and their businesses. And we see all these people like Nancy Pelosi and all these, they go in there at a certain income level and they come out multi-millionaires, right? So they're not trying to benefit their people group. They're trying to benefit themselves. So, you might see that. I don't know. I don't see that from Obama. I think that there's a sinister plan behind him. He doesn't really believe what he's saying. He's just trying to deceive people to vote and to push the agenda that he's for.
I will say that I misspoke when I said that he believes it. I believe he believes it as a means to achieving power. Mm-hmm. He knows he can use that as a means to an end, further divide people. We saw Obama dividing people by race, gay marriage, And now, fast forward almost 20 years, 15 years, now we see the Democrats dividing by transgender children. You know, a complete group that never existed in the history of our country, was never a problem, never part of society or accepted as society. And now they probably have their own flag that they'll fly at drag time story hour in a municipal library. And it's a pattern that you can see, you know, it's a pathological lying pattern to themselves even. And, you know, I truly do blame parents, liberal parents, Democratic parents that inflict such pain or choices upon their children themselves. But it started then and has festered and grown to what we see on the streets today.
It's a small group that I think the majority of America was almost deceived into thinking was bigger and that they must support it. And I think Black Americans as well as Hispanic Americans are opening up their eyes to the deception.
Yes, sir.
They're not falling for it anymore. They see the likes of Trump and they like it. They say, you know what? He actually stands for what I believe in. And it's hard because these democratic roots in our race, if you will, or in our culture, Hispanics are supposed to be Democrats. And you'll see it. People that don't know any better, small-minded people, they think they're white, you know, that kind of stuff because they go Republican, without realizing that the Democratic Party is really trying to keep them in poverty and keep them under their feet. And they're so gullible that they just fall for it. But there's a lot of Black people that are opening their eyes up to it, liking what Trump has to say and liking what he has to do. And so is the Hispanics. We saw it all over Texas, didn't we?
Yes, sir. As a matter of fact, one of my first financial backers in my initial political run last cycle, you know, he's a businessman, first generation American, his AC installation company. He goes into those hot 180 degree, 150 degree attics and installs the ducts, the compressors, everything. And, you know, he told me he used to vote Democrat his entire life. And I asked him, I was putting a sign in his yard. I said, sir, thank you so much for your donation. Want to bring you a sign. And I just like to know, you know, why are you supporting me? And you know, have you been voting for Republican Trump your entire life? And he told me, no, I've been a Democrat. And it wasn't until I started my first business and I had employees and I had to make payroll and the numbers at the end of the day mattered to how much I paid in taxes and what I took home versus how much I paid for my employees' livelihood. He said, I grew up voting Democrat because that's what my family voted. My parents, my uncles were Democrats. That's what they said. That's what they knew. And until he went into business for himself, you know, became a leader in the community, did he realize that, no, I've been lied to, that this has been a sham, that the curtain, the wool's been pulled over his eyes. And he realized, and I'm thankful for their family support still to this day in being a first generation businessman in South Texas.
Yeah, the Hispanic people in the Valley are business minded. They're diligent. They're hard workers. They have conservative beliefs by nature, and third, fourth, fifth, or past that generation Hispanics here, they've fallen for the lie because they've fallen prey to the welfare system, and now they're dependent on it. Hispanics that have been here a long time, not the ones that are just coming in. The Valley has a lot of new Hispanic, hard work ethic. They want to succeed. They want to advance and prevail. So the Trump message really resonates with them. And it even with African Americans, that's beginning to resonate. It's beginning to resonate with them as well. They had been brainwashed into believing that the Democratic Party was for them. They're opening up their eyes and realizing that that's not really the case. They're not for them. They want to keep them down because as long as they can keep them down, they have a what do you call that? Contributors or a base that is going to continue to elect them because they're dependent on the freebies that they're being given.
Without a doubt. Two things on that. I spoke to a doctor who was an abortion doctor in Chicago. And he told me, and this is a crazy stat, he saw 3 generations of the same family, a grandmother, a mother, and a daughter, all come into his office over the period of 20 years, have abortions, have children, no fathers, live off the system. This was an African-American doctor working abortions in Chicago. He actually, he got fed up with it after 20 years and disavowed abortion and became part of the pro-life council and the defund Planned Parenthood movement, actually, after being an abortion doctor. And he told me, we were discussing this, I'm like, why? The African-American population, how could they not get out of this cycle? He told me it's because it's a generational cycle that they get stuck in. Like you said, they get the freebies. They get in the system. Once you're in that system, you don't think about trying to get out. You want more. You're looking forward to that next check, that next direct deposit, even that next abortion, as sad as that is to say. And I think in South Texas, both the African-American population and the Hispanic population are seeing the light, I believe. And same thing in South Texas with my friends. I grew up with friends hanging out in the projects where they're on government assistance, where they had food stamps at the time, and their family was content in that system. Now, my mother, first generation American, family crossed over to Reynosa. I thank the Lord that her father joined the Marines, and he would not accept government assistance. He was a proud Mexicano, and he's like, no, I'm gonna work hard. I'm gonna bring my own bread to the table. And he instilled that upon my mother. They had 10 children living in a 2-bedroom house in Hidalgo, Texas. When she was growing up, she became a nurse, a successful woman, and she's the reason that I'm a conservative and running for office today. But that cycle can get broken. I will say, though, probably my mother's family, half of them, a couple of them joined the military and died as homeless veterans after Vietnam. Her parents died at a young age when she was 14, and she was the youngest child. Others moved to Alaska and they spread apart. But maybe 1 or 2 out of 10 children, got jobs, went to school, got furthered their education, and the rest did not end up as well.
I think us young Hispanics, I call myself young, I'm 50 years old. But this generation, brother, how old are you, man?
I am 38.
38.
Yes,
okay,
sir.
you're great age for that, for what you're running for. So I grew up with a disciplinary of a father, disciplinary of uncles, right? And they were Democrats. But what they were teaching me were conservative values.
Yes, sir.
That did not match with the party that they're supporting. Now, as the years went on, it's very strange that you have a people group that are teaching their children conservative values, and they're then asking them to vote for a Democratic Party that has not an ounce of conservatism in it. And before my dad passed, Trump was running the first time, and he was running up against Hillary, and my dad went to go vote. And one of the time we were sitting in my family kitchen in my parents' home, and all brothers and sisters were around, and my dad's walking around the table, and he said, no, Trump, no, es esto y lo otro, maliciento, and blah, 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 right? And I'm like, he's just like you. He is just like you. And my brothers and sisters started laughing. He just kind of like, no. I was like, he is. He's just like you.
Different.
He's a disciplinary. My dad was a disciplinary. He believed in doing things right, not being dependent on the government. My dad was a good man. And that's why I couldn't. The only reason he was voting for Democrats is because he grew up believing that he had to vote for Democrats. So he went to go vote. We were having a men's breakfast, and he came in and he said, I went to go vote. He says, and I just couldn't vote for Hillary. And I was like, he voted for Trump? He said, no, I didn't vote for Trump either, but I couldn't vote for Hillary. And it was right after the debate where Trump said, I don't know about her, but I can't support killing a baby at the 9th month, pulling him out and killing the baby. And she was cool with it. And Trump said, I just can't do it. My dad watched that debate, and I guess conviction came over his heart. So he didn't vote for him, but he didn't vote for her. after that election, once he won, he became the biggest Trump fan, right, ever, with reason, with good reason. Trump aligned with all of my dad's conservative beliefs of how he raised us, how he was a disciplinary, how you do things right, you don't try to cheat the system. And other people were just following suit and following orders, supporting Democrats. But my dad, thankfully, he broke out of that system and began to support Trump. I don't even know that. Well, maybe he would, because he would listen to Rush Limbaugh and all that kind of stuff. And my dad had a good head on his shoulders, and he went to be with the Lord in December of 23. If I have it correct, yeah. I think it's 23. Anyway, it feels like it was yesterday. But he instilled in us conservative values, and yet they expected us to vote with liberal, left-wing ideals. And it doesn't resonate with Hispanics, does it?
No, sir. I think that's the story for many people, in that Hispanics didn't leave the Democratic Party, as a matter of fact. The Democratic Party left them in their radical ideology and their left-wing policies. You know, when you start to see some of these things at the local level, again, Drag Time Story Hour, the craziness, drag queens in general with children, your mind, your conscience, God made our bodies, our minds, our spirits, and instilled a moral authority. And you recognize evil and wrong when you see it. It's innate.
Yeah.
And for them to promote these policies and these types of actions and support them and call them, they want you to not believe your lying eyes, that what you see is not the truth, that what's going on right in front of you. And it's ridiculous. And thank the Lord that Hispanics, everyone across the nation, is waking up to what is going on with these policies. And, you know, I remember too, even going back to Donald Trump, and I will not speak badly about the Republican Party, but sometimes I'm not the biggest fan of their choices. And I remember voting for Donald Trump in the primary, and it was between Ted Cruz and Donald Trump in that 2015 primary election. And I was like, you know what? I'm getting a little tired of some of these neocons going to war. You know, the Republicans, they have their own issues sometimes. And I want a businessman to come in there and someone to take care of business. I don't want another politician. I like Ted Cruz a lot. I hope he makes it to the Supreme Court one day. And I think he'd be a fantastic justice. But I told myself, you know, I think Ted Cruz is getting a little too politician-y sometimes. And I want to see someone get in there and do business. And that's why I voted for Trump in the primary and have been voting for him ever since.
Absolutely. I wouldn't even call myself a staunch Republican, you know what I mean? I watched Donald Trump, and I've said this before, back on The Apprentice, and I just was enamored by his leadership style. And I said to myself, if this guy ever runs for president, I will vote for him. Well, about 10 years later, maybe a little bit less, he started, it looked like he was going to do it, but he ended up supporting Mitt Romney, which was a huge mistake. And then he finally decided to run, and I was like, yes, you have my vote. And through the process, people say, oh, he said this, he said that. I was like, let me watch. And I said, nope, he's fine with me. I said, I must support this guy. He's going to win. And he ended up winning. And all hell broke loose. The demonic powers left and right broke loose because Donald Trump won. But I was supporting him all the way. I'll continue to support him to this moment. He hasn't done anything that I would say, nope, he shouldn't have done it, other than try to promote the vaccines. That yes. I was not with them. And I said, nope, I'm not going to support you on that. And eventually he wised up to it and dropped that. But I'm not a blind follower of anybody,
right.
You know, other than Christ, right?
Exactly.
But when Trump did that, I was like, no, he's going to have to fix that. When he started talking about Gaza and, you know, he put out a little, like a little
video, that
AI, like an AI where he's, and I said, he's going to have to fix that. And I believe that the Spirit, God has put his Spirit on him, and I believe that he is utilizing him in a good way. But Hispanics are obviously wising up to the Democratic lies, because we have, I don't know how many candidates we have running for Congress in this district. And you're Hispanic, Maida's Hispanic. What's the other gentleman's name?
Eric Flores is Hispanic.
Flores is Hispanic. And there's another gentleman.
Keith Allen is not Hispanic.
Keith Allen.
Maybe he is.
Maybe there's a little bit of Hispanic in there. He's a great guy. And there's another gentleman from Corpus. I can't remember.
Fred Hinojosa.
Hinojosa.
Yes, sir. As well.
All Hispanics but one.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
Yes, sir.
Because we're supposed to be the party that doesn't represent Hispanics, yet all of our candidates, except one, are Hispanics. Isn't that amazing?
I really believe, and the Democrats know it, they've lost the Hispanic vote. Mm-hmm. They're losing the African-American vote. Mm-hmm. And Republicans would do well to secure and keep on courting Hispanics for the future of our country. As Hispanics dominate in the population going across this entire great country, they will be the voting force going forward. And I think Democrats were blinded by their own ambition, taking for granted the Hispanic vote, that they decided to go too radical and they lost it.
Bro, we were too submissive, I believe. Godly people tend to be super submissive, so they let things go by and they want to be
and
nice
they believe
to
if
everybody.
If you tell them a lie, they believe you sometimes.
Yeah, and people want to be nice. Oh, like these people and those people groups, like we got to be nice. They're painted this picture like they're dominating everything, until finally they realize it's just a big scam, and they're trying to keep them down, and they wake up to it. You can't keep somebody down forever. Somebody's going to look behind that curtain and see that Oz is just a old man trying to control you. And that's exactly what's happening. Hispanics are waking up. African Americans are waking up. Asian people woke up, I think, a long time ago.
Yes, sir, they did.
But it's happening. You still got some Hispanics that they don't study for themselves. They don't think for themselves, that they're still like Democrat. System. Yeah, they're part of the system. They'll be Democrat till they die because they don't think for themselves. They're told what to think. And that's a shame.
It is. And I think the Valley, that's one of the reasons that I'm for fiscal responsibility. Mm-hmm. And I don't think we need to be handing out as much government assistance and having the government in people's lives as we do now. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, people in need, people that truly need the support, the healthcare, the food for children, I am more than happy to support them from a federal perspective. But I'm going to be honest with you, Pastor, and please tell me if you have. I have never met a hungry child in South Texas. Like you've probably been on mission trips. You've probably gone in places and seen hungry children. Yeah. I have never seen a child that is starving in South Texas. And I believe that this same system that's keeping Hispanics, that's keeping people in South Texas down, they just get dependent upon it. They get addicted to it. It's a shot into their arm. And my mother, she has the roncha from the original shot that they used to give back in the day, but they feed off of it, and then it becomes a generational cycle. And sometimes we have to take away that benefit. Sometimes we have to cut some of those and get people off the system. So it
because they
itself.
handicap people and make them dependent on them so that they can continue to get their vote. They really don't care for them.
That's right.
We've had politicians come through this town that were from here. They got what they needed to get out of it and pretended like they cared. They don't live here anymore. They don't have anything to do with this area anymore because they've made their money and they've moved on. And they use the system. Maybe that was not their original intention, but I think once you get up there, if you're not strong, if you don't have a foundation on the Word of God and your relationship with God, they'll show you the gold and the glittery stuff, and you'll fall for it. So you have to support people that have strong convictions, or else they'll fall for it too. And it's hard to blame them. People are coming out of there, going in there with under $100,000, salaries, and coming back with millions. And where are they getting that from? And it's just, a little bit here, a little bit there, but vote the way I want. I've known some politicians that were always in China.
Oh, Vicente Gonzalez, maybe?
No, some other ones, I won't mention any names, but they're always in China. And they were consultants. And I'm like, what are you consulting? But, I discovered that they were getting the wish lists from China and then sending it up to their higher ups, and they would get the policies that they needed, that China needed excuse my language, to screw America, right? I'm a pastor, maybe I shouldn't be saying that, but to take advantage of America. They were getting their pockets filled. The Mexicanitos were dependent on them, and they were not really looking out for their constituents. And that's just a darn shame. And a lot of people will not open up their eyes to that, unfortunately, because they're so dependent on what they give them. But we need to open up our eyes, break free from that bondage of dependence on the government, have smaller government, which conservatives are supposed to be for, smaller government, give people an opportunity to climb and grow. And I think people would rather do for themselves than have to be dependent. There's dignity in doing for yourself, isn't there?
Yes, sir. Similar along those lines. For one thing, our current Democratic representative in District 34, Vicente Gonzalez, did have Chinese bank accounts. Mm-hmm. Documents were released showing that he had accounts with deposits from, I believe, the Chinese government in those accounts, which he has since closed.
And why is that? What's China giving him?
That's exactly right. I wish I knew. I do not have that information. Money.
Could it be?
Yeah.
Here's our list. Yeah. Go to Congress. Give us what we need.
Yeah.
But then Trump comes in and says that's going to stop tariffs on China, tariffs here, tariffs there. So it's killing the little piggy bank that these politicians had.
That's right. And furthermore, the globalism attitude of the elites, going back to your story about lining their pockets and making decisions on a global perspective. So what we've done today, and government assistance is one thing, but also imports from China, Indian, cheap manufactured goods that everyone loves. I do, as a family of 4 children and my wife, like going to Walmart and finding items that are under $10, under $5. Under the Biden administration, Dollar Tree had to practically go out of business and raise their prices. But what we have traded today for low prices, and we're addicted to it, is the loss of an entire business communities. I'll give you an example, the flat screen. Now you can go to Walmart, you can buy a 60-inch flat screen for probably $100, $150. 10 years ago, you're paying $1,000, $1,500 for one of those huge ones. And there was a time where they would manufacture TVs, other audio components here in the United States. There are products that they would make here. Well, what we have done is we have now outsourced that product manufacturing to China, Asia, Vietnam. And at the same time, we are paying cheaper prices, but we have killed the communities of manufacturing in America that would produce those things. For instance, in South Texas, Harlingen, we used to have a Fruit of the Loom. There was a Fruit of the Loom textile plant. That's right. Hagar's in Weslaco. Mm-hmm. They used to do that. Well. Lockheed Martin was in Harlingen, Texas. SpaceX is there now, thank the Lord. Mm-hmm. Doodle brown bag manufacturing in Brownsville. There were so many products that were being made that have now been, especially textiles, that have been outsourced to Middle Eastern, Eastern communities and countries, and it kills the economy and jobs. And that's another problem that our economy has done that President Trump, thankfully, is trying to fix. And one last one that's most important to me in the district are shrimpers. I love eating shrimp. I don't know if you like eating shrimp, but Gulf shrimp in Texas, the shrimpers cannot compete with Indonesia, Vietnamese, Indian-grown shrimp because of the price it comes in on. The shrimp that they grow in other countries is toxic. It has chemicals. It has hormones. The Gulf shrimpers are out there catching wild-caught organic shrimp out of the ocean, where this other one is farm-raised. And Trump, Janie Lopez, our representative, and State Senator Adam Hinojosa are actually doing something about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but the Gulf shrimpers are not lining the pockets of these corrupt politicians.
Yeah, that's right.
So these corrupt politicians obviously have to put policies in place to promote their overseas constituents. So it's just amazing that the common person cannot see it. Like, I think there's a lot of people that are waking up, but you'll still have some diehard nonsense type of people that just refuse to open up their eyes to what's going on. Do you think that what is it that's happening that they cannot see these things? Like I'll run into people that you think common sense people, they can put two and two together, but they don't. What kind of witchcraft do you think they have on them?
I think that I know what you mean, essentially gullible Democrats. I think they have a very trusting nature. And if they like someone, they will believe whatever you tell them. Mm-hmm. And you see this in the Christian community, or you see this in the religious community as well, where people get sucked into cultish type of messages, and they are blinded by their faith in a person, not their faith in God, not their faith in Christ, but their faith in another person, and they literally think, no, they would never do that. They would never lie to me. They would never make that deal. And, that's one of the things I do like about Trump, and I try to be as genuine as possible. I want our politicians to be truthful. Is that so much to ask? To be genuine, be yourself. You don't have to put on a persona. You don't have to put on a mask. I think that's been one of the problems of why we haven't won in South Texas, that Vicente Gonzalez is still there, is we need more genuine individuals running for office.
Yeah, we do. And I'm a little heated tonight, I think with the news of Charlie Kirk, and I'm just I don't usually get this riled up about anything, but it's just really frustrating, and I think we got to put our faith and our trust in God that all this will work out together for our good. I got somebody criticizing, those comments where they mentioned something about thoughts and prayers, and I'm like, they actually do. We do receive those. Like, I'll take your thoughts and prayers over your action any day, right?
Definitely. Because
we need to call on God to help our country, to help us as people, to help our hearts. I didn't think I would see any divisive talk, but it was more rampant today than I expected. I didn't think that many people would be so soulless and just dark and unsympathetic to what happened today.
First of all, the Bible says to pray unceasing, and in regards to Charlie Kirk as well, you're right. The comments, the vile rhetoric, and what people are saying. There are people in jubilee over his death, and I would go so far as to say they're probably filled with an evil spirit as well.
Yeah. Because
they know the work and the progress that Charlie was making. And you know what? It is since the days of the Garden of Eden, it is part of sin and our fall as humans in seeing this, except now it's in the palm of our hands, and we can scroll through multiple evil human beings that we are witnessing. And but I prayed for President Biden. I prayed for President Obama.
Yeah.
I prayed for President Trump. I think that's the difference between, some of the Democrats and the Republicans, is that we want success for our president, our leaders, regardless of who they are. You know what? Lord, forgive me. I have never prayed for Vicente Gonzalez, but I'm going to. But I'm going to.
I don't know who he is, but I'm assuming he's rubbed you the wrong way.
No, he's our current Democratic congressman, the incumbent.
Oh, really?
Yes, sir.
Is he the one that beat out Maida?
Yes.
But he won't have this district anymore, or will he?
No, he is with the redistricting.
So one of you guys will face him in the general election,
November of next year.
Okay. I think they've set it up to where it'll be difficult for him to win. I hope that's the case. Democrats are always coming up with schemes like that, and when the Republicans do it, they get all crazy, like, "Oh my God, what are you doing? Y'all are being unfair." But I'm a little hurt tonight, I guess. So I'm speaking maybe out of pocket a little bit, but these past few years, including with I know you mentioned earlier something about COVID before we got on air. You wanted to mention something about that. That was a trying time for the United States. There was a lot of I don't even know what to call it, underhandedness, a lot of evil that was being spread through the guise of a national emergency.
COVID is probably one of the main reasons that I'm here today running for office. Going back to my mother, she was a nurse at the Port Isabel Immigration Processing Facility, where they would encounter the migrants that you encounter along the border. The first thing they do after they capture you is go through processing, where you see a nurse and you receive health care, whatever that may be. You need insulin for diabetes. If you needed a blood transfusion or dialysis, they have a dialysis machine on standby to treat any ailment. And my mother was one of those nurses. Well, she had been there already for 5 or 7 years, and then President Obama comes in. Biden. And they went from seeing, 20 to 30 patients and processes, they called them, in a night, to seeing 300 to 500 people captured on the border, the South Texas, Rio Grande region, and processing at that facility a night. And they knew during COVID that COVID was rampant everywhere. Everyone, all the immigrants there crossing together, those conditions had COVID. And she was the first nurse at that facility to contract COVID and die of the disease.
I'm sorry to hear that.
After that point, the other nurses took a stand and saying, we won't work under these conditions. And, my mother instilled my conservative values in discussion. She was a Hispanic woman, and, she, very conservative, Pentecostal. I didn't see her wear pants till I was 21 years old. And she was a nurse at the hospital,
yeah.
and she came home one day in pants. I was home from school. I was like, what's going on? And she's like, well, my job, they gave us a new uniform, and she used to wear the scrubs. That was a skirt, but she was like, I got to follow the work. So I'll never forget that. It was green scrubs. I'll never forget that moment. But my mother instilled these conservative values, but as a Hispanic woman, she would never publicly state or say some of these things against the government, her employer, against professionals or even men that were in authority, because she was a conservative Hispanic woman. Well, we would have many conversations, and today I feel like I'm her voice, because this is where I learned in the immigration facility with my mother's death that politics affects policy and policy affects people. President Biden was voted in, and his politics created the policy. And his policy literally affected the death of my mother and the amount of that immigration surge. And that has been my motivation in running for office and bringing a better place for South Texas. My platform is running on making South Texas great again. Vision 2050, looking at the next 25 years here in Robstown, Nueces County, San Patricio, Hidalgo, Willacy, Kennedy, Cameron, and Clayburgh, looking at drainage, water, hurricane preparedness, new businesses, conservative values, keeping women men out of women's sports. All of these are issues that everyone cares about. And I'm hoping to be a voice that brings those to the table and make sure that we have conservative leaders representing this region in Congress.
Amen. I'm glad to hear that. I believe that we need it. I believe that our area has been deceived for too long politically. They've gained the hearts of people, and they haven't really given back what they promised to give them when it comes to politics. This redistricting, I think it's a great opportunity for conservatism. And Robstown, I believe that it is big, will be a big factor. I believe that they are ready to hear what it is that conservatives have to say, Republicans, more than ever before, I think.
Yes, sir.
So I pray that Robstown is kept on the forefront of the eyes of whoever wins, that they keep Robstown in their peripheral, in their mind and their heart, because Robstown has been abused by politicians for far too long, and they're won over easily. They trust easily, but they are let down a lot. And why many times they remain committed to a certain party is beyond me. They've never done anything for them. I think Robstown has been in the same situation. Even when we had representatives in high places that were from Robstown, they haven't really responded. And I think it's okay, because I think that it's going to come from a God move more than a political move. So we do need godly people in politics.
Yes, sir.
I'm glad to hear that you are a believer. And even though it does come from the political field, it's because a believer was in that spot. So the scripture says that when the righteous are in power, the people rejoice. So I wish you the best of luck. And as the other candidates, I think we have a great little bunch of candidates that are running. As far as the ones I've met, I think so. And you're another one as well. I don't think at this point I'd be disappointed if any of y'all won. I think you've kept your composure tonight. I was a little bit upset. I think my emotions showed a little bit. And I pray that I ask the audience to keep me in prayer, because I am a little bit. Today I didn't realize some of the things I had posted. I posted some things, and I was like, did I post that? I could not remember posting it. I was so out of pocket, and it was hard to do. I didn't even preach tonight in our service. We just kind of worshiped and prayed and for our nation and for the condition of our people. Charlie Kirk being taken like that, I think I want to pray, take an opportunity to pray. If you don't mind, if you could lead us in prayer for our nation, for even these elections and the role, I guess, from the church that God wants us to play. Do you mind leading us in prayer for that?
Of course not.
Go ahead.
Father, we come to you today knowing that your will is done on this earth and that your knowledge surpasses all understanding, Lord. And we ask that your peace be upon Charlie Kirk's family, the peace that surpasses all understanding, Lord. And we ask that you bless this nation, that you continue bringing leaders to the forefront that believe in your name, that proclaim the gospel, that ask for forgiveness of the sins from your son dying on the cross, Lord. And we know, regardless of party, regardless of history, that they are forgiven and that they are giving new life, new wine, and that your blessing will be upon them in the future. Lord, today I ask you to bless Robstown, to bless Pastor Joel, Lord, his congregation, his church. And we ask that you bless all those mourning for Charlie Kirk and his family and the message that he preached publicly, proclaiming your name, family, children, and godly service to our country, Lord. I ask all these things in the name of Jesus Christ, the Father and the one and only. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. I needed that. If anybody out there needed that, I needed that. So final word, I want to give you a final opportunity to just speak a word out there to the public that are watching. I believe a lot of people are watching. I don't know what led to this, but I started getting phone calls. You guys wanting to be on the podcast. I really appreciate that. I've been waiting for a call from somebody, and I was hoping that it happened this month. So I was kind of like, if you can wait. But I started sensing that it was a need, that maybe God was orchestrating this. So I'm glad to have the opportunity to have you guys on the podcast and give you an opportunity to speak. What would be some final words that you would want to say to the people watching?
My final words are that I know God's will is working in South Texas. I can see it every day. I see it in the hearts, the minds, the spirit of the people. And I think that they know that we need someone to speak for their voice, these issues that affect all of us, regardless of party, regardless of faith. We can help the people of South Texas. Conservatives, Republicans are doing that because, quite frankly, the Democrats have forgotten how. And we need to, because the Bible commands us to help those in need, to feed the hungry, to mourn with those that are mourning. And I am here to do just that, to be the voice of the people, to listen, to speak for them when their voices or they feel is not being heard. And I ask that they please look at my platform, my vision for the next 25 years, a plan of lifting up out of poverty, new jobs, new technology, and fixing problems. Again, drainage, water for our people, literally water, clean, running, drinking water for our children and their children. No one has solved some of these problems yet, but I have a plan that I have brought together that I believe has been inspired by God for the future of South Texas. And I want to thank you so much for giving me the opportunity today to speak, to mourn, to get some of these things off of my chest. It's been a pleasure, a blessing, and I thank you very much, Pastor Joel.
You're welcome. We can continue to keep the Kirk family in prayer and just pray to see what it is that God is going to bring out of this. I believe that anytime the enemy means something for evil, that God will bring good out of it.
That's exactly right.
And I really believe that is what's going to happen. I believe that a lot of people are going to rise up because of this, and that he will become the martyr that God wants him to be. So, Mr. Greg Kunkle, thank you so much for joining me in the den under these circumstances. I really appreciate it. And I think we really touched on some important issues.
Yes, sir.